Hello, everyone. Welcome to Buenos Aires. It's a real miracle that we're here. And as Chris said, I do believe in miracles. I want to start off by sending a message of thanks and solidarity to our Chilean friends and colleagues. Like you, we're heartbroken by what has happened in Chile in this exactly to the day in this past month. Chile is a great country. It is still an example to countries that want to rise out of poverty through economic progress. It has taken a 44% poverty rate down to 14% in just 25 years. And whatever the cause of these troubles, which we see recurring everywhere in the world, and I will address them in my remarks this morning, one thing is clear to me. Chile will make it through this to even greater achievements. Now, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for half a dozen unbelievable people. Alejandro and Maria de Los Angeles were responsible for leading the effort on the Chilean summit, and it was going to be a magnificent summit. And I hope that sometime in the future we will be able to hold it. When we decided to shift, Maria Laura and Seb, our former colleague, Maria Laura Tinelli, as you know, leads our Argentinian NAB and is a trustee of the GSG. Seb was a very dear colleague of ours at the GSG until he moved into government, sprung into action, and made this event possible. If it hadn't been for Amit keeping our program together, there's virtually no change to the program that we had in Santiago. And Chris and her team, Francesca and Laura, we would not be here. You pulled off not the impossible, but the miracle. Now, the context that has brought us here gives us a sense of urgency that we need to lead this revolution forward as quickly as we can. Throughout the world, capitalism and democracy are being challenged in new ways. While the causes may be different from country to country, one thing is absolutely clear to everyone. Inequality, the gaps between rich and poor, which have increased instead of decreasing over the last quarter of a century, are a common theme. And those who are trying to find solutions in the political sphere today, through redistribution of income, must realize that no redistribution of income can be sufficient to redress the inequalities that exist and the threats to our environment. Tinkering within our system isn't going to bring the solution to the great challenges that we face. The people that you saw in the video before the speeches started, the huge migratory shifts from poorer countries to wealthier countries, where people are risking their lives in rubber rafts to cross turbulent seas in order to find a better future, where 800 million people in the world lack education, where those who are left behind are stuck permanently behind, with no opportunity to move out of their misery. And so what we are saying here is enough of being like a drunken person that bumps into two solitary trees, one called socialism and one called capitalism. And having been knocked down, get up and bump into the other tree and say, lost, lost in a bloody forest. The opportunity exists for a third system. And indeed, if you look at history, our economic systems have evolved through the centuries. They have evolved from mercantilism, where countries tried to use trade in order to strengthen their power, through the laissez-faire of the Industrial Revolution years, through to the managed economies, the Keynesian economies that followed the Great Depression, through the neoliberalism of Milton Friedman and the primacy of profit, to a new system which must come by necessity and not by choice. And that system is the system that we propose. A system of guided markets, where, as Christina said, we are not just expecting businessmen and women and investors to optimize risk and return without worrying about the terrible consequences that they create on people's lives and on the environment. We want a system where we ally the invisible hand of markets with the invisible heart of markets, which is impact. People have thought that nothing can be measured in the area of impact. And yet, we are proving that lots can be measured. We're proving that you can launch social impact bonds. We have twice as many in circulation today, 180, in twice as many countries, 30 countries, dealing with 15 social issues, where the returns to investors depend on achieving social improvement. We have twice as many as we had 2 years ago. Impact investment itself has trebled in the last 2 years to be over 500 billion. The flow of sustainable investment has gone up since our Chicago summit 2 years ago from $22 trillion to $31 trillion. More than 20% of professionally managed capital in the world. That truly is a tipping point. And what does it say to us? It says to us in this room and to others outside who don't yet hear it, you can deliver both improvement in lives and in the environment and attractive profits. While the private sector has created many of the ills that we are trying to solve, the private sector and the capital markets need to be harnessed if we are going to be able to bring permanent solutions to these inequalities. And so while capitalism 1.0 may be letting us down now, while the social contract that has existed for 250 years has broken down, if we want to replace it, we can't replace it by going back to methods that have failed. We have to replace it with something new and innovative, and that is impact economies. When we started out on this path, we thought we had invented a new, more imaginative solution to funding those who want to improve lives and the planet. And our narrow path has widened as we have moved forward. And today, the destination of it is clear. Tipping Point 2020, we're going to achieve. We set it 2 years ago in Chicago as an objective. We are blowing through all of the objectives that we set. We're beginning to find the largest pension funds allocating capital to sustainable investment and to impact investment. We're beginning to find entrepreneurs developing new business models that enable them to achieve both the fulfillment of their lives by helping others and spectacular results. And so we find ourselves today not on a narrow path, but on a road already, where we have been joined by many. And the next milestone for us has appeared very clearly. It is the SDGs. The SDGs were set in 2015, the year in which the GSG took over from the G8 Social Impact Investment Task Force. The world has focused on them, has connected with them, and it is becoming apparent now to those like you, NDP, and others who are leading the effort to achieve the SDGs that they can only be achieved through impact investment. If we don't bring the private sector with its ability to harness innovation and entrepreneurship and capital at the same time, we will not achieve the SDGs. If we, through our initiative now, to bring impact measurement to companies through impact-weighted accounts, our joint initiative incubated at Harvard Business School with the Impact Management Project, if we bring that and we attach it to the growing flow of sustainable investment, then we can expect that $30 trillion or more, which is the gap, will begin to achieve impact through companies. The bond market is going through a transformation. Green bonds, blue bonds that deal with the ocean, brown bonds that deal with the soil. Why shouldn't that be 10% of the bond market? It should, and even more. That would be $8 trillion by itself. And the private asset classes, like venture capital and private equity, where I made my career, are now leading a movement of these asset classes to measuring impact, to becoming impact venture capital and impact private equity firms. And if you add to that real estate and infrastructure, where there are new impact streams arising, then we can go beyond the $30 trillion that the SDGs need. Beyond the SDGs, the goal is very clear today. The goal is impact economies, where business and investment decisions are based on risk, return, and impact. So how are we going to achieve that goal? Let us first of all understand together the dynamic of this impact revolution. How did it start? It started with young people mainly, changing their consumption, moving it away from the products of companies whose values they reject. As consumption patterns began to change, investors began to realize that these changes threaten the fortunes of the companies in which they invest. And they began to direct their investment flows in the ways that we see through sustainable investment now. The implications were not lost on companies, and so it is not surprising that today we see 180 CEOs of the Business Roundtable in the USA coming out and saying the era of shareholder supremacy is gone. We are now into stakeholder supremacy. We are obligated to serve not just our shareholders, but the societies and the communities in which we work, and to take care of our employees, and to improve the environment. A similar effort is being led by France in the same area. I was privileged to participate at a meeting with President Macron and 34 leaders of mainly European companies. Business for inclusive growth is the slogan. That's the slogan. But what's the content? The content is impact. The content is the measurement of impact. The tools are going to be to look at financial accounts and to adjust them for the impact that is delivered through the sales line, through the products, in other words, moving it up or down, through the operation cost lines, through employment, moving it up or down depending on the incidence of the impact and its value, and through operations and logistics and product packaging, the impact on the environment. And so if we think about who are going to be the constituents of this impact revolution and what we expect of them. For consumers, we expect you to continue to do the same thing. We expect you to shun the products of people or companies that you don't share values with. For entrepreneurs, we expect you to create new ventures, like the amazing ventures that you created in the tech revolution, but this time put impact at the center of your business models. Like Orcam, an Israeli company that I have come into contact with, that set out on the road to a successful venture which has raised $100 million to provide spectacles for the blind. Spectacles that whisper into the ear of the blind or visually impaired person the page in the book that they're holding, or the newspaper they're holding, or the banknote they're holding in their hand. That in itself is a fantastic entrepreneurial impact venture. 35 million people in the world, 300 million visually impaired people in addition. But if you think like we do, if you're an impact entrepreneur, you ask yourself the question, how can my technology and my company help the maximum number of people in the world? And the answer that comes back is a different one that we would have heard if we had been thinking in traditional terms. It is, what if you gave these spectacles to the 800 million illiterate people in the world? What would that do for their lives and their livelihood? What would it do for the economy of their countries? What would it do for the global economy? And that's what is going to be the driver of this impact revolution. Once again, those who brought us the tech revolution, in which I was privileged to play a small part, are going to bring us the impact revolution, disrupting the models of companies across the world. Investors, what do we expect of them? Well, they have done well. They have moved in the right direction. We expect them now to spread impact measurement. We expect them to require it of the companies in which they invest. When impact-weighted accounts appear in the next couple of years, we expect them to ask the companies in which they invest to begin to publish them. And we expect them to put allocations for impact in their portfolios. We have to move beyond the vague intention to create impact, to create measurable impact, and to be able to compare it so that capital flows can go to those who are able to find the best optimization of risk-return impact. And to governments which are beginning to wake up to the importance of these new tools to solve the problems they face, we say, look at the companies that are providing employment in your countries. Require them to publish impact-weighted accounts. Deregulate so that investors and endowments can manage to direct their capital, not to profit-making opportunities and just profit-making, but to opportunities that are both impactful and make profit. When impact-weighted accounts, to use Warren Buffett's phrase, appear, the tide is going to go out, and those who are swimming without bathing trunks are going to be exposed. So companies, you need to begin to measure your impact now. You need to begin to manage it. You need to reduce your negative impact, and you need to begin to address social and environmental issues and create positive impact. And then philanthropists. My first words for philanthropists are thank you. If it hadn't been for you, none of us would be here today. And I want to read out the names of the philanthropists who have brought us to this place. Omidyar Foundation, Ford, MacArthur, Rockefeller, Hewlett, Bertelsmann, Gulbenkian, Big Win, Elmer, UBS Optimus, Wittelsbach Foundation, Liechtenstein Foundation. We would not be here without your vision in getting us started, and we will never forget that you backed us. And then our sponsors, our summit sponsors, British Council, Zomalab, ACTO, FMO, Crédit Coopératif, Envio, Fundación Emprender, and Almado. Thank you. We would quite literally not be here in Buenos Aires without you. But there is an opportunity now for philanthropy to bring the impact revolution to itself and to lead it. Bringing it to itself means using the new tools of outcomes measurement, of outcomes funds, of pay-for-success securities, using them to supplement our grant programs, and the judicious use of our endowments. It is self-defeating for the endowments of foundations which are there to pursue their mission, create the problems, environmental and social, which their grant programs are trying to solve. Philanthropy should lead the impact revolution. What we are doing is going in the direction of all your missions. Join us in this revolution now. We've had the startup phase, we're through it. Soon we will be at 40 countries. Now we need growth funding, and we rely on you to provide it and to lead this revolution with us. And so I come down to this summit and what we hope to achieve while we're here. We are the warriors, as Christina said, of this revolution. It is your passion which makes you the vanguard of this revolution. You have proved it by reorganizing your schedules in order to make it here from incredible distances. We want to address 3 issues while we're here. The first is, how do we accelerate the growth, the spread, and the depth of impact that our form of investment creates? The second is, how do we connect with the SDGs to help improve the lives of people across the whole world? And the third is to define impact economies, about which Amit will be speaking, and the work that we have done to help define them, to refine that work, and to set out the milestones that we need to pass on our way to reaching them. Now, when I was leading APACS in 2002 at its 30th anniversary, I made a speech in which I said that if we do not deal with poverty and those left behind in more appropriate and effective ways, a curtain of fire would come to separate rich and poor in our cities, in our countries, in our regions, and across our continents. Sadly, the situation of those left behind has worsened since then, instead of improving. We must now seize the opportunity to change the world. Victor Hugo famously said, "Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. Impact's time has come. It's unstoppable now." Onwards and upwards.